Shifting over into how's been your Diablo experience so far this week? I know we've talked about it. We were playing a little Call of Duty on Wednesday. Surprise, surprise, I showed up.
Every time I play this game, I want to play it more.
Yeah. What is it about it that you feel like continues to draw you back in? Because I've heard so many people who were like on the fence, and that's such the best kind of game to release. People were on the fence, kind of skeptical, and then the game comes out, and then it's like, oh man, this is either what I was wanting, or it has addressed the kind of concern. What do you think?
I think the world exploration really baits you into like the just one more thing mentality, which is a very like Diablo way of thinking. Like if I just do one more meth run, I'll get the drop I need. So I think the world exploration is really cool. They've built it in such a way where progressing alts is going to be trivial, which I think is where a Diablo game shines. Like it's really fun to explore all this once. You don't want to then have to do it again and again and again and again. So like that's going to encourage people to play multiple classes. And the fact that I'm not locked into my class for the season unless I want to make this my main game feels really nice. The story is unbelievable. It's the cutscene quality, the voice acting is so good.
Yeah.
And that's just not something I've ever expected from this genre.
I think one of the things that brings that up, though, because I felt like, for the time, Diablo's cutscenes have always been really well done. These are Blizzard cutscenes. And then as time has progressed, the game visuals with Diablo 4 and the cutscenes, they feel very connected. It all feels very cohesive, where Diablo 3 was a little bit more light. And that's something that people called out, in the graphic style as a part of it. But that's what a lot of people maybe were first introduced with Diablo. Diablo 4 kind of goes back more to its roots, like Diablo 2, darker, more medieval. But now we're seeing the in-game engine graphics then tie right into the visuals and the cutscenes. And so I don't feel like I'm being pulled out as much, where like if you remember like Final Fantasy 7, which is a great topic that we can talk about today, Final Fantasy 7, like they sold it on the cutscenes, right? The graphics of the cutscenes. The game overall was gorgeous, but looking back at it now, you can see a vast difference from gameplay and cutscene, where now as we're getting into it, like it's very, very blended, very cohesive. And I feel like that's what Diablo 4 has been able to deliver. This I almost called it an expansion, but with this release. What else outside of the story? Like you've been playing the Sorceress. Do you have a game plan to level up any alts? Because you said that
I didn't, but like now it feels like the game's kind of like made that something that, if I have a friend that wants to switch classes or something, like I could very easily hop over, because my alt would already be kind of a little bit of a god mode.
Yeah.
And that's only going to be more the case. Like as I unlock even more stuff, I'm going to get to where like my alts are just going to be these ridiculously powerful things. Because you carry stuff with you. They're going to have 10 potions on the bar. They're going to start with 13 skill points at level 1 out of the 62 that you get. Like every time they want to upgrade anything, they're going to upgrade everything fully automatically, because I'm going to have unlimited resources. So like it just feels like, why would you not play an alt if you have a reason to? As of right now, like I think it's better off to just progress my main. So I'm enjoying. I'm wrapping up Act 3 probably right after this call. I thought I would wrap it up right before, and so Act 3 will wrap up, and there's 6 acts, I believe, over 5 zones. So I'm just focusing on that right now. But I think like for me, Diablo has been a great game to play casually in addition to other games. Focus on one class, and then if you want to play a different class, wait for the next season, and then pick up that other class. Then has always been kind of how it's been easiest for me to consume, so that I can kind of keep up with my friends who maybe do keep multiple classes geared, but they play a lot more than me. But now it's like, well, I don't think it'd be that hard to catch them. I think that as soon as I have a complete map, all of my skill points and potions transfer. So, that part being account wide is really, really great.
Yeah, I feel you there. One of the things I want to ask you about, especially as he talks about kind of the monetization of how Diablo 4 is structured, it's, buy to play. You then have the optional battle pass that is essentially going to roll out with the different seasons. But they've already confirmed expansions are a big part of the game plan. What do you feel would be the right kind of cadence for the expansion culture within Diablo 4 to really make it a game that doesn't necessarily become kind of back of the mind, becomes more of the like, oh, this is the, whether you take part in the seasons, kind of that at all, but where like you and I are like, guys, it's June is Diablo season. What kind of cadence do you feel like from an expansion mindset? Because that usually has the biggest way to draw in the most people back to a game. What kind of cadence are you thinking?
Every 2 to 4 seasons, and then it depends on what an expansion entails.
Yeah.
Does it add a new class? Does it add new skill trees to existing classes? Do we change the way affixes work? Do we add something new like rune words? Do we add a new zone? Do we add additional modes? So like it just depends on like how big that word expansion is, because it's already a seasonal model. So we're already hitting reset like 4 times a year. So I would sync it with one of those. I wouldn't go every time, but like I think every 2 would be pretty freaking often, and less often than every 4 might start to feel like, well, how big do they have to be worth it? Because you're already expecting me to come back for these seasons. Like, I don't know what all gets put in the season. It's the same question I have for New World. Like, what's the difference between a seasonal reset and an expansion reset? And that's just a cadence that you have to kind of figure out which is which, as opposed to more standardized MMOs. They don't call those seasons. So like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy call those patches and expansions. And so there's a very clear line between the two.
Yeah.
But like with PoE 2 on the horizon, Diablo 4 needs to really like cement its space, or like they're just going to give up market share to PoE 2 when it comes out. So like that's their job, right? If their job is to sell games and keep people in their ecosystem, they are competing directly with Path of Exiles 2, which is slated for some time next year.
Okay, so they at least have a year to build up and then, release an expansion. I think the best kind of cadence, when we start to think about how games that we generally talk about a lot happen, you end up seeing, like, I wouldn't go more than 2 years for an expansion, because you're right. How much content does that entail? However, if they're able to hit like an expansion a year, it's like a yearly check-in with the game in terms of like for example, like, does an expansion need to have 3 classes? No. Well, maybe if they went every 2 years, like putting in more content for that makes sense. But does it make more sense to have that yearly expansion where it's like, hey, we've added a new class? Because that's one of the things that I think people who have their favorite class within Diablo haven't yet seen it, because this is kind of them going back to the roots of Diablo 2, which I agree with. I love the class selection that we have here is phenomenal. Would I like a paladin? Absolutely, but we'll get there. But imagine if like next year, it's like, instead of like having it to be, like you said, like massive, they're able to tell like more of these kind of like milestone stories that ends up being kind of that check-in. And then you end up selling, obviously, the seasonal passes that kind of, for the hardcore players, for the players who don't want to stop, who want to just keep pressing on. And then essentially you've built this kind of playground that you're able to expand on yearly with enough content to kind of fill in the gaps where people will dip out, people will take breaks, but then they'll able to sit back and overall have a really good time. So that's where it's like, it'll be interesting to see in the life of what we have here. The thing I absolutely adore about it is I've been running it primarily on Steam Deck, because that's where I get to spend most of my time gaming. So it's been very comfortable for me to kind of kick back, relax, and play, be able to jump in with others. And then I'm debating on if I want to go ahead and pick up the game on Xbox, but that ties into the will they, won't they, Microsoft acquire Activision Blizzard. I'm kind of waiting to see, because I would hate, like, I've already purchased the game, so I feel like I'm financially like, yep, you've gotten my money. I don't want to just give it to you, especially if it ends up being a game that comes to Game Pass once that acquisition is completed. So that's where I kind of stand on the, like, I wouldn't mind picking it up on Xbox, just to sit back and have another place to play it. But those are my thoughts. Any thoughts you have?
Would your wife play with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think before the acquisition came through and all that stuff rolled out, because it wouldn't be like, hey, we announced the acquisition is going through. Okay, the next day all that stuff is in.
Oh, it's all here.
It would take a long time.
It still take a time, yeah.
I will tell you that, like, my brother's been playing with his wife, and he says that it is the single best like AAA quality couch co-op game he has
Yeah.
had in years.
Yeah.
He's like,
Well, and the fact that it is couch
phenomenal.
co-op on Xbox and still connected and online, it's not like you're off in this own version of the game, because that's the thing that would have just absolutely become an easy deal breaker. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to really invest in another character, another account.
You just log in. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just log in. So if I went out to visit him, I could try the couch co-op, sit down at his Xbox with him,
and bring on your character. Right.
And I could bring my character. His wife has a character but doesn't own the game because she just plays on their Xbox, and the purchase is tied to his Battle.net account.
Yeah.
But he said is the single best couch co-op experience he's had in years. They do a ton of couch co-op games together.
Mhm.
So that's pretty high praises in my opinion. So that's pretty cool that he actually believes that the game was designed around couch co-op and the rest of us are just allowed to enjoy it. Like that's how firmly he feels. He goes, I think they came up with a couch co-op Diablo game and then are like, okay, how do we make this an enjoyable experience for PC players alone?
Yeah.
He's like, I just don't see how it wasn't a fundamental thing that they were testing from the early days and it could turn out this well.
Mm-hmm.
The bosses feel good. The zones feel good. He's like, we love it. So
Excellent.
He's actually, his wife went out of town to visit family and he's like been waiting on her to progress because he's enjoying it couch co-op so much he doesn't want to play without her. Which that's once again, like that's pretty high praises. If the couch co-op is that nice that you don't want to play it without couch co-op, that's pretty cool. I've been having a great time without couch co-op, so it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that this is the less premium option.
Yeah, I've been having a great time on Steam Deck and on PC in ultra wide, and also like in the handheld mode. And then obviously that's really good news, like from the couch co-op perspective, because I hadn't actually heard anybody, praise the couch co-op yet. So I was like, oh yeah, I know that existed as a feature. And so I guess as soon as kind of Julia and my life kind of get back into a kind of a more normal sleep rotation pattern, that might be something we look to pick up and play together. Because she's been asking, she's like, oh man, we should sit down and like pick a game, and just like we do kind of with the show, and because we did that with like Tomb Raider, where we just kind of pass back and forth and and beat the game and kind of move on to something else. So that might be something that could be a lot of fun. That especially if I'm making progress on like a new class and things like that, that's something I tend to enjoy, is like not feeling like, oh man, I'm progressed. Like imagine like, hey, I've got my new Destiny character that's just on this one system that it doesn't affect anything else that I'm doing or any of the other friends that I play with. Like then you have to make this like weird choice. Like do I spend time doing this or do I spend time doing that? And I don't necessarily prefer that. Any other thoughts on Diablo 4 before we jump into the next subject?
No, I think it's a great game. I'm not done with it yet, but like I don't see how it's not worth my. I think it's $70 to buy the base copy. I don't see how it's not worth $70.
Right.
So that's that. To finish on like one final thought, I would say like, are you going to get your hour of joy per dollar? I just don't see how you're not. I'll get it in the first season. So there are people that are saying, well, they could really mess up the seasonal model, or it could be underwhelming or overwhelming. And it's like, yes, but I won't be invested in that. That's a bonus thing. Like if I'm thinking of this kind of like a God of War game. Like if I can enjoy season 1 enough that it's like paid for in my mind, then like they can totally put it out to pasture after that. And it's like, well, that's a bummer. That was a missed opportunity. But I don't feel screwed over.
Right. That's a really good point. And so that's gonna be kind of our Diablo 4. Like I totally agree with you on a $1 per hour joy. Like it is easily worth the price of admission, even if you get the higher end versions. At least right now, the amount of time I put into it, the amount of time you put into it, the amount of time that's coming in the near future with that game, makes it a really great kickoff to June, regardless of what else is coming up this month, this insane month.